The human body is a very meticulously crafted machine and has pretty much worked out the perfect way to operate in the world we live in. The 5 senses that are effectively the default for our bodies are incredibly important to everyday life, and the world is based around our ability to see, hear, touch, smell, and taste. The issue arises, however, when certain people are unable to perceive the world in a certain way, whether they were born that way or suffered an injury later in life. Sight is likely the most important sense in many ways, and recently, scientists have figured out a way to engineer artificial corneas to give certain people their sight back. This is an incredibly delicate topic for many reasons, and it should be stated that there is very much nothing wrong with being blind. There are several communities that have formed around the disability, and many feel incredibly strongly about the way of life they've been able to craft throughout their hardship. This is only meant to be an exploratory journey through an incredible piece of technology that's only recently come to fruition, and is in no way shaming anybody for the way that they wish to live or the manner in which they perceive the world. The eye is an incredibly complex organ, and considering how many creatures on Earth have evolved to utilize it, it seems to be a fairly important one. Sight is the main interface through which people perceive the world, and is crucially important for safety, understanding, personal connection, and several other overall aspects of being human. That's why it's so fascinating that scientists were able to come up with a solution to people losing their eyesight, and it seems to be working incredibly well. Chapter 1: The Eye. In order to understand the new technology that is allowing people to regain their vision, one must first understand the eye in general and how it works. The cornea is the outermost layer of the eye and is a transparent film-like tissue that covers the iris and pupil in a protective layer. It serves 2 purposes: keeping debris out of the eye and focusing the light being passed through it onto the back of the eye. Keratoconus is a condition in which the cornea begins to slowly lose collagen over time, growing thinner and often changing shape, which impairs vision due to a difference in the way light is refracted through it. The cornea is a very specific shape, so any warping whatsoever can easily lead to vision impairment and even total blindness. Corneal blindness is one of the leading causes of blindness globally, accounting for over 5% of cases in which people lose their sight. Injuries from debris scraping across the cornea, bacterial or fungal infections that damage the cornea, and several other causes can lead to deterioration of the cornea and eventually total blindness. There are a couple of ways to fix this that have existed for quite a while, the most notable being corneal transplants. The issue is that donors are incredibly rare, especially within low-income countries where corneal abrasions and blindness are the most common. This is also paired with the fact that transplant recipients have to take immunosuppressants for the rest of their life in case of a rejection, which can get quite expensive in low-income countries. Because of these issues, a research team at Linköping University and Linköping Life Sciences in Sweden have come up with an alternative that seems to have worked incredibly well so far in clinical tests, and may be incredibly important in the way humanity handles vision loss going forward. Chapter 2: The Pig. The team in Sweden actually used collagen protein from a fairly unusual source, and one that many people have criticized due to its oddity. They extracted the protein necessary to work on their projects from pig skin. And although that sounds unappealing to most, there's actually several good reasons why pig skin is better than most other alternatives in the world. It has a remarkably similar structure to that of human skin, and is also a byproduct of the food industry. It isn't used for much, and therefore is generally just discarded. There are a few niche uses, like for apprentice tattoo artists, but generally most pig skin is just tossed. The researchers extracted the collagen and then placed it into a cornea-shaped hydrogel scaffold, which effectively acted as a sort of mold. They used chemical cross-linking in order to reinforce the collagen and keep it from degrading. The cornea goes through a decent amount of wear and tear, so they need to be quite durable if they're going to functionally replace the one present on the human eye. Using pig skin is quite cheap because of the amount of waste there is, and therefore it could be a very feasible solution for low-income countries who are looking to repair their eyesight. Although it would still likely be expensive because of the procedure required, it would just get it that much closer to being in the hands of the general masses. The procedure is a difficult one and took quite a while to figure out, but at the end of their trials, the researchers fully believed that they had changed the world. Chapter 3: The Procedure. Testing something like a pigskin cornea on a human in most of the Western world is highly, highly illegal, and getting the necessary permits was taking quite a while. Therefore, many of the scientists traveled a bit to the south, supplying doctors in countries like India and Iran with some surgical-grade samples in order to perform tests with. The surgeons had a total of 20 patients, 14 of which were completely blind, while the other 6 had impaired vision as a result of keratoconus. The doctors worked out a minimally invasive technique, making a laser incision in the existing cornea and inserting the implant rather than removing the cornea entirely to slot in a replacement. This technique reduced inflammation significantly and resulted in faster healing in the patients. The incredible thing is that after this procedure, the patients only had to use immunosuppressant eye drops for 8 weeks, as compared to a year or even an entire lifetime with traditional cornea transplants. The team monitored the recipients for 24 months and didn't note any complications or adverse effects due to the procedure. In fact, the implant caused the corneas to return to their normal thickness and curvature, with the body working its healing magic and allowing things to settle to where they needed to be. The 14 patients who were completely blind before the procedure all had their vision completely restored, and those who weren't blind moved from severe visual impairment to low or moderate. 3 of these patients even ended up with perfect 20/20 vision, while the others were now allowed to wear contacts because the procedure had fixed the shape of their cornea. Contacts are made in a very particular shape, so if the cornea is damaged, it can be impossible to put them in and use them to their full potential. The team has gone on record to state that the results of their procedure are comparable and even greater than a normal corneal transplant, but with a simpler surgical technique and no need for human donors. There is obviously room for improvement. The implant has only been manufactured in 2 thicknesses, whereas it would be more beneficial to make custom implants for each patient. This could improve outcomes even further, possibly allowing all people with corneal blindness to return to perfect 20/20 vision. They've also commented that although they've monitored the patients for 2 years, there could very well be some issues later down the line, as pig collagen was not meant to last as long as human cells. Despite this, it's an incredibly important part of technology, and being able to engineer new body parts is becoming almost the norm. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. This study is relatively new, and the technology will take a little while to settle in the modern atmosphere surrounding surgery. Many people fear even the simplest of procedures, and therefore it would be difficult to convince many people with corneal blindness to even take the leap to try this experimental technology. Despite this hesitation, synthetic body parts are actually performing incredibly well in terms of a scientific growth perspective. Things like 3D printed ears, custom grown bones, or even artificial kidneys are all in the works, where they wouldn't have even been in the most ambitious doctor's dreams only 20 to 30 years ago. These aren't just prosthetics, these are fully functioning biological organs that are able to be grown outside of the body and then surgically inserted, allowing more of a semblance of normality than the old pacemakers and metal bones and the like. Overall, even though the technology is new, all technology has been new at some point in its development. The first computer was thought to be a fad, and yet look at how the world has evolved to completely circle around their use. These pieces of medical technology may seem new and strange now, but in 20 or 30 years' time, it could be the case that they have significantly improved quality of life, time alive, and several other aspects of the human experience that can't even be fathomed yet. The researchers working on these things are actively pushing to make the lives of humans better, and it's something that should definitely be celebrated. Bioengineered corneas have given 14 blind people their sight back so far, but we have no idea how far that's going to go. There could be more trials happening as we speak that aren't in the public knowledge, and they will very likely begin offering these pigskin corneas as an option at hospitals. The biggest thing that the average person can do is be aware of these options, because without people knowing about them, they won't be used to their full potential. Organ replacement technology is most certainly in its infancy, but people like to live. Because of this, it's likely that it will become one of the largest industries and areas of scientific study in the world. There were 14 people today, but tomorrow there could be 1 million people walking around with pigskin in their eyes, able to see the world thanks to the work of these few scientists. Thanks so much for watching. If you like videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button so we know you want to see more of this content. Technology is always making leaps and bounds in every area, so it's very likely we'll see something else interesting develop soon. Make sure to hit that bell for upload notifications, and we'll see you in the next one.